Good morning. This is Jason Dean. Good morning, YouTubers. Hope everyone's doing good. It is now Wednesday. So it's about 10 in the morning here at the Film Fanatic Quantum headquarters. So hope everyone's doing good. It's hard to believe we are at part 9 of this crazy series. So, yeah, before I get into this film, well, there's two more movies after this. And then I got two more reviews to put up on my pages, my main Film Fanatic at main on my Instagram page, and then also my Facebook page, Film Fanatic. So I have two more reviews to do for the next one will be Freddy vs. Jason, which I'm super excited. I'm going to watch that tonight. I've seen that a bunch of times. I'm going to watch it again tonight. I try to, whenever I do a show, like when I started out doing Film Fanatic, I used to always, obviously do reviews. And at first, it was, I've had it for a few years now. So when I first was doing it, I would always put like a YouTube clip or like a trailer of the movie I was going to review. And I'd mix it up. I do, back then, well, honestly, back then, when I started the page, I was going to movies like literally all the time. I used to go to the movies at least 3 or 4 times a month. I used to go all the time to the Colonial Theatre in Belfast. I would go to Flagship here and there down in Thomaston, and occasionally I would go to other places like Railroad Square in Waterville, Maine. I would go to a Regal Cinema, I think it is, up in Augusta. Railroad Square was awesome. That cinema, and then also the Strand. But I most 90% of the time or 80% of the time I would always go to the Colonial Theater just because it was close. My Railroad Square is an awesome theater in Waterville, Maine. And it's a super cool place because you can go in and there's like a restaurant inside. You can get like pizza and food and the theaters are tiny, but the sound is killer. And so wherever you're sitting in the theater, you're really getting that immersive experience. And Railroad Square tends to play more. Well, I guess you could, if you want to call it, art house films. They tend to play films that are, not so much commercial films. They do show films, but they're known for showing more art films, a lot of foreign films, low budget films, independent films. Such a great theater, but I haven't been there in a long time. The last time I went there, I saw The Lighthouse there. I saw and The Lighthouse, directed by Robert Edgers, starring Robert Patterson and William Dafoe, is an amazing movie. Robert Eggers, I think, is one of the best working directors. The last movie he did was The Northman, and I did a review of that. I saw that. I got to see that in the theater, but I remember going to see the Lighthouse in the theater. If you haven't seen that, I highly recommend it. He's probably most well known for The Witch, which I think is a tremendous movie. That was a movie when I first saw it. I thought it was really good and really solid. But I remember after I saw it, like a few months later, I ended up buying it. I bought it on Blu-ray, and I've seen it a bazillion times. And that movie got better and better. I enjoyed it more and more each time I saw it, and I got something new out of it. And it's a tremendous movie. And I remember diving into, that movie pretty heavily. And I remember reading or seeing an interview with Robert Eggers, the writer and director. The other thing that's really great about Robert Eggers is he's such a hands-on director, and he also writes a lot of the material with his brother, or writes everything by himself, and also directs. So all of these stories that he directs and movies that he directs are pretty much things that are loosely based on some kind of literature. I know, like The Northman that was based on I can't remember the name. It escapes me right now, but it's based on like a Viking saga, more or less. And the Lighthouse I think, was based on a short story. But he has, such an artistic vision, and just he operates on this grand scope that he makes these things original. And The Witch was all original, but I pretty much consider all his stuff to be all original content. And it's such a rare thing because it's always something new and fresh, and you've never really seen it, uh, or seen a story like that before, particularly like in the horror genre. But I remember seeing an interview with Robert Eggers, and he was talking about, you know, kind of his process or whatnot, and like his movies that really inspired him that growing up. And I remember watching The Witch, like I said, and that was my first movie I really got into of his. And I remember seeing an interview with him, and he said that when, I think it was before he had gone, he did go to a film school, but before he went to film school, he had seen, when he was, I think when he was a teenager, and then when he was like starting to get older, one movie he watched all the time was Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. And he said he got obsessed with that. And he said that was the movie that really gave him an education. And he said what he would do is he would watch the movie literally time and time again. He would watch it over and over again. And after the first, bunch of times he'd seen the movie, he would watch it from more of an analytical perspective. And he would actually write notes. And then he would also take these notes in this notebook, and he would, scene by scene, he would make these little markings and notes as to certain kinds of camera angles that were used, the pacing, these long shots, these close-up shots, the sense of, or how Stanley Kubrick was able to create this incredible atmosphere. And he literally like blueprinted and mapped out how he felt technically the movie worked. And he used that kind of framework to direct The Witch. And I thought that was super interesting and super fascinating. And I remember after this was a few years ago, after I saw this interview, I watched The Witch again. And I could totally see that, like particularly like the opening sequence to that film and a couple other scenes where there's not a lot of dialogue, and there's all of this atmosphere that's created, and all of this, you get the sense that all these things are happening, but they're really not. And it's really the way the camera is placed and the pacing of it, and it's really slow, but yet you're getting this information, and it just creates this incredibly eerie, spooky atmosphere. And I was like, wow, like I can totally see the influence of The Shining on The Witch. And it was a really interesting, kind of process of not only as a fan or a viewer, but trying to understand where Robert Eggers was kind of coming from. And it was very cool. And then I remember seeing the Lighthouse at Railroad Square with a friend. And I remember going to the theater, and it was a real rainy, stormy day, and it was like the perfect atmosphere, and such an intense movie, but tremendous director. But so I used to go to the theater all the time. I had a different schedule then, and back then the Colonial had first run movies, but they had they would show like the big blockbusters, but they'd show independent films. They used to show a lot of horror films, of course, all the Marvel movies that started coming out. But I used to go there all the time. I used to go to the movies all the time. And when I first got into movies, like big time, I used to go almost every weekend. And then my schedule changed, and it got harder to go there. And then obviously the Colonial Theater shifted and changed their whole format. So they started just showing like classic films. They would show like Casablanca and older films, and they do these like specialty kind of screenings. Like I got to see the Godfather, which was my all-time favorite. I got to see that there fairly recently. But they stopped showing newer movies, and then they changed their whole format and they started doing like comedy shows. They started having live music. They would have different writers and speakers, like a person who wrote a book on, say, some kind of survivalist thing would come in and give a talk, or they, something about um, some kind of environmental issue, and it was harder to go to movies there, but they were, and then when they would show movies, it would be, like I said, they would be definitely older films, but they would only show them for like a limited amount of time. So if you missed a particular weekend, the movie would be gone. So it was disappointing, but then it was also like, I don't know, it's an interesting change, and all of that stuff came, and all those changes came about because of the pandemic. So they had to kind of adjust, and unfortunately, they're going to be closing for a while. So, and hopefully, these new folks that are supposedly interested in buying the theater, they will take over and reopen. So, but yeah, lots of great memories of that theater. I remember seeing an interview with Mike Hurley, who's the owner of the Colonial, and he actually was the mayor of Belfast, and he's a super cool guy. I do know him pretty well. He's always been really supportive of of some of the things that I do in the music world, and but I remember seeing an interview with him very recently, and he was talking about this newer kind of model, because, and it was obviously, it was a small, he runs a small mom and pop theater, or at least did. He actually has two theaters. He has one here in Belfast, and then he has one in Holton, Maine. And I remember actually going to the one in Holton a couple times when I was a kid, because we used to have a camp. My family used to have a camp way up in Island Falls, and it would be kind of on the way. I remember, of all movies, going to see Days of Thunder with Tom Cruise there. But anyway, I remember him saying how these, and even it's affected big chain theaters, but he was talking about, how do these theaters survive in light of this, all the access that people have to like streaming services, because that's clearly like changed the whole scope of things. And so he felt the idea of like a traditional movie theater, as far as like you going in and they have like new releases, some older ones, but it's like, a movie will come in, say it's like the Batman, Robert Patterson, for example, like a big blockbuster. You have that come in, and it runs for like 3 weeks or a month, and then they have another batch of other movies, and then they'll show other movies that were, maybe not, or they'll show a group of other movies that are, maybe more independent or whatnot, but they have a rotation of different films and genres. But strictly, it's a movie theater, so it's showing movies. And he said that whole kind of framework is almost archaic, in that it's in face of reality, the reality of competing now with streaming services as a viable theater. He kind of felt that was outdated and archaic, and was kind of built to fail. And so he had this idea of trying to model the theater off of other places that have kind of done that a little bit, like the Strand, which is a great theater, where they have non-film related events there also. And they do these short runnings, and they tend to show, more, independent films, art house films, documentaries, but they mix it up quite a bit. They don't show any Marvel movies. They don't show any, quote unquote, money making Hollywood films. But Colonial was a place that did that. So it's an interesting thing. Even like you take a big giant chain, say like Flagship, which is national. There's talk of them possibly closing because of the same circumstances. And it's a very difficult time, because my job schedule and everything kind of changed for me, so I wasn't able to go to the Colonial. And obviously, they changed their whole kind of way of operating, their whole like mode of operation. So when I have been going to the movies, which was a pretty good amount, still not like I used to, but when I do go to the movies, it's always at Flagship. But every time I've gone there was probably one time I went there and it was, or maybe two times, where it was actually really busy there. But most of the times it was like really dead. I'd go with, by myself or a handful of friends or a group or one other friend, and we would, I'd feel like we had the theater to ourselves. And this is a big chain. And it's sad, but then it's a complicated situation because, I mean, on one hand you have the streaming services where it's relatively cheap. People can, you know, sit on their couch and make a sandwich or pause it at home and go to the bathroom or whatever. And but the thing is that it's the convenience of being able to be in your own house and that it's you know easy. It's just easy and the convenience of it. Whereas like the theater, you have to go pay a ticket, physically go to some place and sit in a chair. You can't necessarily run around and do other things and check your email or be on your phone or text your friend or it's usually pointless things that don't need to be done that are these like ridiculous distractions. So so I think it's an excuse, but I feel like people are not getting that experience, and I kind of feel like there's obviously people out there that want that ritualistic experience to go into a dark theater and to experience that one on one with a bunch of strangers and have that intimacy because that's what it is. That's what it is. It's part of our collective. It's in our collective DNA to have that shared experience, like when we go to a rock concert. When we go to a friend's birthday party, or we have a birthday party, or we go out to dinner, or we go see fireworks. It's all that aspect and part of our species is kind of part of us, and it's important because it's a sense of community, but then it's also a sense of where it takes you out of the mundane, particularly like say if you go to a rock concert, and it gives you that experience of forgetting about what happened to you during that day or night. And you have the trappings, you have like pretty lights, cool colors, music, you're in the dark, and it's supposed to be a transcending experience. And that's what going to the theater is. So it's a very interesting thing of or dilemma as far as films go. How that is being slowly eradicated. And I don't feel you can't really necessarily stop it because of technology is just growing all the time. But we'll see where it goes. I think there will always be an audience for people who want to have that experience, but I don't know. It's a funny, weird time. I think a lot of people. I was talking about that with somebody the other day. It's it's kind of moved to a way. We're with technology. We have this whole thing of like we're given this idea that well because of technology we're closer as a species to each other and that we have because we can share all this information and be in contact with somebody constantly we we're closer as a species, but I actually feel it has separated us more from each other, and there's a sense more of isolation. We kind of live in dystopian times, and there's a deeper sense of isolation. I feel like that idea that we're actually closer is kind of an illusion. We're in this digital age, and on one side, there's a lot of great, amazing benefits because, like, say for instance, being able to start a YouTube channel and being exposed to lots of cool information that you might not have had access to before. That's pretty amazing. Or bands being able to record in their own house or their studio, and all kinds of things, and software that is available now for making videos or making movies, even. So there's all kinds of incredible benefits, and there's less of a wall up, as far as like being exposed to different genres of music or films, like because the stuff is readily available. All you need to do is kind of search around and you'll get exposed to something that's completely new. So it's got all these great benefits, but I also feel socially it's kind of pushed things apart a little bit because the technology acts as like this strange little kind of buffer, and people can be behind their devices but they're not having that direct experience of like seeing somebody or being in that place with them necessarily and expressing an idea. So it's a weird thing. It's a funny, strange thing, and I think that that that's something we're missing as I think as us just being human beings is having that experience. So yeah, it's very interesting. Um, but getting back to the movie, and oh yeah, and a couple other things I want to talk about first before I get into this movie. So unfortunately, well, good news and some bad news and then some good news. But unfortunately, I had said, we're getting near to the end of this entire Friday 13th series, and I was going to mark it with doing a big Film Fanatic party where we were going to watch Freddy vs. Jason and do like a live streaming thing, or like basically I was going to record it and upload it to my YouTube channel. And that was going to be on September 16th. And then the other thing, which will be happening, is I'm going to be actually interviewing a actress who was in the movies. She was in one of the movies, so that's going to be very exciting. That's going to happen in like right after Halloween. So stay tuned for that. But the I just had to cancel the party on September 16th because I've been in negotiations with a couple of different places of trying to do a quantum show, but then also try to a couple of friends and I had a few friends that I play with, my friend Ronnie and Halsey, who were both like just incredibly talented guys, and we've played together in different configurations. And Ronnie and I have played together doing. We did a. He's an amazing musician and an artist, but he does a lot of great electronic music. And we played together this summer at our quantum release show, and it was really fun and it was a blast. So, and then Halsey, my friend Eric Halsey, who is an amazing musician, also tremendous bass player. I play in a band with him, and we've like done a few different things together. He also has a side uh, project, like a one man show, and so we were talking. That's also electronic. So we were talking about the idea of trying to put together some kind of show where we could all like do a set and have this like event, and that spurred a lot of ideas in my head about trying to figure something like that out. And I was like kind of checking out a few different places that would be into doing that, and being that the summer is like technically kind of over, and the idea of we can't. I mean, it's the weather's still pretty nice, but as far as playing outside, that's going to change here in probably a couple of months. It will get too cold or whatnot. So, but I was thinking of the idea of like, maybe finding a place that we could do that. And I had reached out to a few places, but anyway, so I got the opportunity. We're going to be playing at Ada's on September 16th, and that was the date of where I was going to do the party. So, but this will be really great. I'm really excited. It's kind of a relatively last minute. I put up an event page for the show, Electro Dance Party. It's going to be at Ada's September 16th, which is it's a week from this Friday, and it's going to start at 7:30, and Unfortunately, Ronnie cannot do the date, but it's going to be still, I think, really cool, and we'll still do something in the future, definitely. So, but it's going to be basically we have 3 hours, like a 3 hour slot, and it's our first time playing at Ada's. They usually don't have music like this. They don't usually do electronic music. They sometimes do like these DJ things, but they mostly have like a lot of acoustic and kind of, more or less typical things you'd probably see around here in Mid Coast, which is all great, but nothing that's, more fringe or in this kind of vein. So I was really excited that they were at least into the idea that I had. Originally, it was just going to be us, you know, playing a 3 hour set as Quantum, which would have been great and fun, and we would have done it. But it's shifted gears because I was like, it'd be cool to like maybe we could bring in some other bands and bring in some other groups and just like have a little bit more variety and so we're gonna do that and Eric Halsey is gonna be performing on this gig also. We'll do a Quantum set, and then Halsey will be actually making his debut playing in front of in the public. And like the stuff we do, we do like ambient. I always like describe it as kind of ambient inspired dance music, but we have a lot of different influences from jazz and rock and some punk rock and even noise stuff to soundtrack stuff to like house music. We have a lot of different influences, but so we'll be doing our set, and then Halsey's going to be doing a set, and his stuff is definitely in the vein. It's got a lot of hip hop kind of flavor to it. Thundercat comes to mind. One of the most amazing musicians on the planet. Very modern sounding hip hop with like a modern funk kind of feel. Very danceable. So he's going to be playing also. And then a guy I just recently met, Spencer Roulard, who has a group or a one man show called um, Methods for Madness or Method for Madness. He has a radio show on WRFR in Rockland, but he reached out to me. We had communicated. He had reached out to me about a month ago, and we like talked about stuff. And then he sent me a bunch of links, and he does all this really wild and cool like modular electronica techno kind of stuff. It's really cool, and I dig that stuff a lot, the whole modular thing. And so he sent me a bunch of clips, and I checked out a lot of the stuff and a lot of the things. And then so the other day I put up this flyer, the event page, and he reached out to me, because we were going to just do the show where it was just going to be me and Halsey, Quantum and Halsey performing, and we have like a 3 hour set or a 3 hour time slot to fill. And originally I was trying to get three groups to do it, but he just basically said, hey, if you want me to come and do like a little opening set, I'll do it. I'll come in and just do it for free, and it'll be fun. And so I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Let's do it. And I talked with him. So he's going to be playing also. He's going to be doing like an opening set for like a half hour to kind of kick things off. But he's great. He does all this really kind of improvised modular electronica stuff. It's a little bit of a techno vibe to it. So that's going to be really exciting. So yeah, that will be next Friday, a week from this Friday, September 16th at Ada's, right in Rockland, which is a really great restaurant, really good food, and it's one of those places I feel like has gotten better and better over the years, especially the food. They they have like they've kind of made some changes to have music there, so now they have like a stage inside, and so yeah, looking forward to that. It should be fun, and our first time doing a a bill like this where we're having uh, you know multiple groups, and I used to do shows like that quite a bit back probably during when we first started Quantum. The first 3 years or so of Quantum, we used to do these shows with like lots of different other bands, and a lot of the stuff was more the other bands were more in the vein of like the whole kind of underground, if you want to call it like the noise kind of scene, like the crusty punk basement dingy kind of thing. And but we never did really a show where some of the groups were electronica. There was one or two shows where that was definitely a part of it, but they were mostly like kind of rock or psychedelic noise kind of stuff, kinds of things. But this will be the first time that we'll be doing a show where it's like all electronic music. So, and we haven't done a show with other bands. A lot of the times, the last bunch of years or so, we've been doing shows just kind of by ourselves, and occasionally we do some stuff with other people. But we basically, try to do things that are, uh, you know, we have a lot of material so we can cover a lot of space. So this will be exciting. So getting back to the topic of today, this movie here, Jason X. And this movie came out in 2001. It's it's a well, it's kind of a pile of crap. But again, it falls under that thing of where I really dug it. I thought it was a cool movie. But it's pretty bad. It was right during the cusp of, it's in the 2000s, so like in the 90s or so, like mid 90s, that's when like computers kind of came into the age, of filmmaking. But the graphics were pretty terrible, and it was a little bit before CGI. And also the Matrix had just come out, and I saw a thing recently on or an interview with the director of this film, and he was talking about James Isaac, the director. He was talking about they tried to like make this movie in a way that could appeal to the Matrix fans because it has a very sci-fi vibe to it because it actually takes place in space. It takes place like 30 years in the future, and Jason is cryogenically frozen, and he eventually gets out and goes completely insane and kills all these people on the ship. But he also is rejuvenated, and he through this newer form of technology, he is basically created again, and he's stronger than he's ever been. But it was right on the cusp of people using computers and CGI, and so like the actual the it's definitely has the worst computer generated graphics I've ever seen in my life. Like it's so freaking bad. It's so bad. It's unbelievable. It makes like the graphics say for like the first version of Donkey Kong or something look amazing. Like it's really bad. But I think the movie works on a lot of levels to a degree because it's pretty original. I think it's kind of cool to see Jason Voorhees on a spaceship and having that as the backdrop. And there's a lot of like virtual reality scenarios in the film where they throw the Jason character in these like virtual reality simulations, and it's kind of interesting and it's kind of cool. And it's even though visually it doesn't really work, it is it's something I've never seen, and I thought that part of it's really cool. There's some pretty good kills too. This was the last film that Kane Hodder did for the entire franchise too, and this is again another film that was released through New Line Cinema, and this all leads to Freddy vs. Jason, which came out, I believe, after this. So, and the production level, like I said, is really, really, really rough. But it's got some things about it that I like. I think it is pretty original, and it's super because it's again it's something I've talked about many many times because it's so cheesy. It kind of works, and so yeah, it's a ride. It would be cool. I only have this. I bought this or I got this somewhere on DVD quite a few years ago, and it's one of those thin little covers. But it actually has like a pretty good amount of special features on it, which I'm really surprised. Like there's about an hour or so of like kind of interesting interviews. There's one where they do a whole like talk on the whole franchise, and then the one on the movie itself is kind of actually cool. But yeah, I don't know. This is a movie I'm kind of craving to watch again. It's strange. This and Part Five, Jason Lives. Those two films right now are this Jason Part Five, and then this one of all movies, which I'm surprised. They're both so different. But those two films in particular are ones that I hadn't seen in a really, really long time. And those are two movies. These are, two movies that I'm kind of craving to watch again. So yeah, check it out. It's a trip. It's terrible, but kind of cool. So this is Jason D, and this will conclude this show on Film Fanatic. If you get a chance, like and subscribe to my page. That would be wonderful. And up next will be Freddy vs. Jason. So super excited. And then after that, the last one is going to be the Friday 13th, the reboot that came out uh, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And that will be it. So thank you. And we will see you soon.